All right, we're here at Lake Como on a Saturday afternoon. It's beautiful, warm, not a breath of wind. We're just waiting for our boat tour that Colin has kindly booked. In the meantime, it's 1 week from the Berlin Marathon, which these two gentlemen have finished with very respectable time. So we had a quick interview before the race. Today is a post-race interview. So I'm going to ask these two guys some thoughts about the race, both pre and during, as well as future plans and whatnot. So let's get started. Okay, firstly, congratulations on fantastic results. It was phenomenal. Can you let us know what results? What was your final timing?
2:46:50 53.
I did 3:14:46.
Times aside, were you happy with your performance, whether it was with respect to your time, or is it an accurate reflection of what you put into training?
I think I was happy with the time. It's a PB, 3-minute PB. But the last few kilometers were really tough. All things considered, it was good.
I think my race went rather decently well. My main aim was not to cramp up. I had two minor cramp episodes at 28 and 39k, but otherwise, was running for most of the race. It's more about, I think, the experience and the way I executed the race rather than the time itself. So I'm quite happy with it.
Talking about the experience overall, how many days did you arrive before the race, and was that enough time to adjust to Berlin weather?
Yeah, the race was on a Sunday. We arrived on Thursday night. I didn't suffer too much jet lag, so for me, it was ideal.
It's not as long a journey to Berlin as it was to Chicago. So yeah, it was smooth sailing, I think.
So getting to Berlin, going to the race expo, any thoughts around the race expo? Did you enjoy it? Was it well organized? Was the signage clear? Was it efficient compared to, say, Chicago?
Berlin we did with a tour group. It was easy in that we just followed the tour group to the expo. But the expo wasn't as efficient as Chicago. There were bottlenecks and we had to wait for quite a long time. Rachel was left out of it. So all the runners went in and then Rachel was standing outside. It wasn't that conducive to non-runners. They didn't really feel involved in the main part of the expo.
It was interesting because it was different from other races in that you had a wristband for you to enter the expo. So I had thought that was for the expo alone, but actually you need that for the race itself. So I almost cut it off before the race, but thankfully we had a conversation about this and left it on eventually, so that was good.
VIP is behind the camera. Rachel is the one helping us with today's filming. So turning to the race, so Sunday, 24th of September, race start. Can I ask, firstly, what was your favorite part of the race and what was your least favorite part about the race?
So again, because we followed the group, we were shepherded to the start line by the tour organizers. So that was very good. We didn't have to think too much about it. Another good thing was the bag drop. They were split up according to race bib numbers. So you didn't have to queue up for very long in your designated bag drop. Aside from that, I think everything else was not as good as Chicago. It was a lot messier. Getting to the start line was a lot more disorganized, and getting into your designated start pen wasn't carefully thought out. Many people were hopping the fence. The start pens were very cramped, I think because there were many people who were not meant to be there.
On the whole, I think, sure, there were some of those points, but I think the sheer size of the Berlin Marathon, the masses of people, it was, I think, unlike any other. And being in the start pen, you can see the elite introductions being done right at the front with the huge screens. So you saw Eliud Kipchoge, the German champ, and that was quite remarkable, I think, for someone in the race, but also being able to see what's happening with the elites beyond sort of the wait for the toilets, which meant that I only got to the pen about 10 minutes before the start. But otherwise, yeah, it was enjoyable. And I think the other thing that we should actually highlight is the climate activists that came out and poured some paint on the roads, and we only realized as we were running past those paint. And thankfully, we didn't step on any of it. Otherwise, our shoes would have been wrecked. But that was interesting as well.
And while it's still fresh in your minds, for any future participants of the Berlin Marathon, is there one tip or a couple of tips that you would give to them to help them achieve their best time in the race?
One thing I learned from Chicago, which I applied here, which I thought was useful, is a fueling plan, right? Because I think a marathon takes a lot out of your body. You need to be fueling throughout the race, and I made sure that I took bananas at every opportunity. There were bananas handed out on the course, so do take that. I had my gels with me as well, but it was good that there were a couple of gel stations, so I took that as well. So I had maybe 4 gels, a few bananas. Made sure I took the Morton drinks for carbohydrates, and I think that helped me stave off the worst of the cramps. So yeah, feel well.
Yeah, I think my tip is don't queue for the toilets because there's always another way.
So I'm with Rachel, who was supporting Colin and Dev, who is now holding the camera. One big part of the race is not only just running the race, so the actual races, but also the supporters, partners, girlfriends, etc., on the course supporting their runners. Rachel, you were at 3 different points on the course. We were talking yesterday that there was one point that was super crowded, other points were less crowded. Any suggestions as to what spectators can expect or should do when they're at Berlin?
So what I did different this time round was I came a lot more prepared. I had a huge sign that said Dave equals awesome with like little hearts on it. I don't think the Germans are very fond of signs, so I didn't see many signs along the route. But that was very helpful in helping Dave spot me. So at the 7K mark, I didn't see him, but he saw me and he shouted out to me, so that was good. So I didn't miss him there. And I was also camping at the 19K mark as well as the 32K mark, both of which the sign was very handy in allowing him to spot me. So I think having a sign helps.
And what about the 19K, 32K? Would you advise people to go straight to those spots instead of sticking around near the start point?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. My plan, having learned from Chicago, was to go to cheer zones where there are less people, so that there's a higher chance of your runner spotting you, and you'll be able to get like a better video of them as well.
And finally, what about getting from point to point? Is the signage or the transportation efficient, clear, easy to use?
Yeah, so I think it's relatively easy. The only problem was that I was slightly more ambitious and I had planned to be at 5 different cheer zones. I only managed to visit 3, but that was good enough, I think. There were a couple of train delays, which meant that I couldn't catch Dave and Colin at the last 2 cheer zones, which I think would have made quite a bit of difference, because that was at the 37K mark and the 41K mark, which is probably the most strenuous for the runners. But I think it was good overall.
2 final questions. I guess now we've got a 2:46 marathoner here, Berlin under your belt. What's next on the agenda and what's your next target time?
Colin and I are doing a Singapore Marathon first week of December. We are both masters for the first time.
What's the definition of master?
35 this
35,
year.
okay.
So as long as you're past your 35th birthday as of the marathon, you qualify. So I guess to try and place well in that, maybe a sub 3 and sub 250 maybe if you're in shape, and then possibly Boston next year.
Yeah, like Dip said, I'm signed up for the Singapore Marathon as well, so that will be the next one on the calendar. My aim, is just to sort of maintain the fitness from now and do around the same time. And the idea is just sort of to carry the fitness forward, right, rather than let it lapse and get a good experience out of it.
Well, thank you for your tips. Thanks for having the chat. And let's go enjoy this beautiful lake.
Thank you, David.